Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Rainy Toon Talk. And tonight, join us, we have John Watson. John, thank you very much for coming on the show tonight.
Pleasure.
And Stephen as well, just in case anything goes wrong as well. But we always fire the questions across now, so happy days. But lots to go over tonight, John. Lots of memories I'm expecting to come from you as well. I know it was a pleasure meeting you at the Burnley game and the former player event. Lots of good stories as well. So just starting with the early days, which I think Stephen's going to go over with you to start there, Stephen.
Yeah. Just start off with John. Obviously, you made your way through the youth system in Newcastle. And just explain a little bit, how did joining Newcastle actually come about? Were you picked up through school football
It was a bit of a mix: school football and youth football, boys club.
Right.
I came through Wallzone Boys Club, as a lot of young lads have in the northeast.
Yeah.
So sort of around the age of 10, 11, I was starting to get noticed. And our age group at Wallzone was really strong. We had Steve Watson, Alan Thompson, Rob Elliott, myself, all in the same team. So we were a strong side at that age.
Yeah.
And it was actually Watford that showed the first sort of interest. I played for the school at St James's before the first team game. It was Newcastle against Arsenal, and the school team played against a school from Blythe, and we beat them 8-3, and I scored 5 of the goals, and one of my friends scored another 3. And there just happened to be a scout in the stands from Watford, and they started, expressing an interest. Would I like to go down for trial? And at the time, I was already sort of like being looked at by Newcastle, and then very soon after, I entered into the Centre of Excellence, is what it was at the time.
Yeah, brilliant. What was the youth program like at the time when you joined the club?
It was very productive. There was a lot of young lads coming through the system at the time, because I think back in what was the late 80s, early 90s, if you were good enough, I think you had an opportunity. You were able to sort of push your way through youth team, reserve team, and there was a pathway there. I think that pathway is probably slightly more difficult now for young kids to come through. But it was a great time. Made friends that I've had for all my life so far, and I'm sure we'll moving forward. So it was great times, good memories. It was hard work, like a lot of things are. If you want to be successful, training 3-4 times a week, double sessions with the older kids, but it was all good. A really good experience.
Excellent. Just touching on it a little bit more there, moving up through the age categories at the club at the time, did you get to the point where your confidence was thinking, I can actually make it, Jack? Was there a strong belief in that?
I think I was quite fortunate, because when I went in to start my apprenticeship, so left school at 16, and very soon after, I was playing regularly in the reserve team. Now, the reserve team back then, of course, you were playing against experienced professionals. I made my debut at Old Trafford. There was 10,000 people in the stand, and I was playing. I was striker that day, and I came up against Mal Donaghy, who was obviously a World Cup player for Ireland. And I think that's the difference now. The young lads are playing the 18s, they're playing the 23s, and they're just playing amongst themselves, really, with nothing at stake. We were playing in a league system. Like I say, you're playing against experienced professionals who are either coming back from injury, out of favour, suspended. So that learning curve at 16 was huge, and I think it readied yourself for that next step. So as a 16-year-old playing at Old Trafford, playing at St James's every other week, going to the likes of Villa Park, Goodison, playing at big grounds against good, experienced players, it was a great grounding.
Special, isn't it? Really special. Just moving on a little bit further, John. what went through your head when you found out you were going to go pro at Newcastle? What were you thinking at that time?
I don't think I necessarily thought about the professional side of it. It was because I was an apprentice, and like I say, I was already getting into the reserve setup.
Yeah.
16, I was in the first team squad. Now, being in the squad then, you are in a squad of 14, 15.
Right.
You're not in a squad now where you might have 20 named players on a weekend. So I was playing regularly in the reserves. In the squad, prior to making my debut, I was in the squad a good few times. So I was getting that feeling that things were going well. It was all positive. I hadn't even discussed with the club about a pro contract. I was just happy to be playing well, enjoying it. There's a YTS at the time. You're getting £30 a week. It wasn't about money. I was playing for me boyhood club, even though I was a Spurs fan when I was younger. But that's another story. But coming through at your hometown club and knocking on the door of the first team was really special.
Yeah. Just touching on breaking into the first team, how did that actually come about then?
So like I say, I've been in the squad a few times, and it was when OZzie came in as manager. Obviously, Jim Smith was a great manager, very old school. If you weren't doing things what he wanted, he told you, but he'd pat you on the back when you were doing well as well. I found him a great manager. OZzie came in, and as a young player, you could see again if you were good enough, you were going to get a chance. And OZzie his hand was maybe forced because he wasn't able to buy players like future managers were able to.
Yeah.
And he was probably, his hand was forced to play the young lads if they were ready. He didn't have any sort of hesitation of putting them in the squad. So at the time, you had the likes of Lee Clark, Dave Roach was coming through. Obviously, Steve Watson had made his debut under Jim Smith. Likes of Lee Makel, Steve Howie, Alan Thompson. So there was a good nucleus of young players there that if OZzie needed them, they were, he was willing to trust them.
You get a lot of that from your manager, don't you?
Yeah, and I was playing as an attacking right back when OZzie came, and essentially it was just you just get yourself forward. I remember it was a reserve game, and the whole change rooms at St James's. He took me to one side and said, "Look, just get forward, attack, and when you get back is when you'll get back. Basically, it was like, don't worry about defending. I just want you to attack." And that was maybe his downfall in the end.
Yeah.
His teams were too expressive. They gave away too many goals, probably through naivety, in all honesty. But as a young player, listening to a World Cup winner, and again as an ex-Spurs player who I used to support, being told, you're a great player, just go forward and express yourself. It was, you were on cloud nine. It was amazing.
Yeah, it must have been some really amazing memories. Like you say, being as a Spurs fan as well, just seeing someone like that, it's fantastic.
Yeah.
I mean, as you say as well, coming through from the reserve level of the first team, as you say, yourself and a few members that's actually former players that's done the questions for us in the Facebook group, you were involved in a really serious car crash, weren't you, on the way back from the Leeds? And obviously, after that time, what was your kind of thoughts on, could this be an injury that could stop you going forward? I know there's a lot of lads hurt in the incident as well.
Yeah, I mean, it was personally, it was a scary moment, obviously.
Yeah.
But from an injury perspective, I was really lucky compared to some of the others. I was we were 5 of us in a Mini travelling back from Leeds. We'd gone down to watch one of the lads play in a reserve team game.
Yeah.
5 of us travelled back in an old Mini Cooper. Hit the central reservation, tumbled down the A1 a number of times, and Alan Thompson was in the back with myself, another lad, Phil Mason. He was also in the back. He got ejected from the cars. We tumbled. Alan Thompson when we eventually stopped, the car was on its roof, so we were hanging upside down. And you're talking about, you know, early 90s, so it wasn't, you know, seat belts and everything. And I was just very conscious of, let's get out the car. Let's, you know, I'm expecting the car to go up in flames, and Alan Thompson's complaining about his neck. Obviously, we later found out that he'd broken his neck. But it was just a, you know, let's get out. And what we didn't know at the time was, you know, Phil had been ejected from the car, and we got out and there's only 4 of us, and it's pitch black, you know, late at night, just south of Durham. And Phil had actually landed head first under the central reservation, about 100 yards down from where the car landed. And I suppose, you know, the positive thing from that is all 5 of us played again. Alan obviously went on to play and represent England and had a fantastic career. And his injuries were obviously the worst. Phil did have some, what we thought were, you know, career-threatening injuries at the time, but he made a good recovery and had a decent career himself. So it was, it was scary times, but, you know, we came through it.
And how was the club around that time? Were they really helpful and keeping you going throughout that time?
Really supportive. You know, I think Alan talks about it in his autobiography. You know, a lot of the more experienced pros would go down and visit him in hospital because he was in for, you know, a long time. As Phil was, I think they had beds together for a good while in the hospital. And, you know, the club were really supportive. Just, you know, whenever you're ready to come back, we're here. You know, was there anything that they could do for us? And for me, it was, you know, the initial sort of shock and the minor injuries that I had was I wanted to get back and just, you know, move on, get some normality back in. But, you know, normality was strange because some of your teammates were still in hospital and you didn't know whether they were going to walk again, never mind play again. So it did take a little time to just, you know, get over that shock. But the club were fantastic.
Brilliant. And like you say, you did go on to better things because, as you say, you made your first team debut in 1991. I mean, just building up to that debut game, I mean, what's the feelings? Did you know that you were going to be in the squad at the time, or was it kind of on last minute that you would be told that you would be playing?
Again, you know, the squad's 15 men. It's named on maybe a Thursday, so we'll probably had a reserve game on the Wednesday. The squad's announced on the Thursday once everyone's, you know, declared themselves fit or whatever, and then you're gearing up for the weekend, and it was trying to be as normal as possible, really. I couldn't drive, so I ended up getting the metro to the ground. Got the metro to the ground, walked up from the metro as I would normally, as if I was turning up for a reserve game, and you know, very few people sort of recognised you walking through the crowd. It was, you know, couples stopped and, you know, signed a couple of autographs, but really it was just metro, arrive at the ground and try and sort of see it as a normal game, which obviously it wasn't. You know, it was probably it is the greatest achievement that I've had in football. And you know, you were named as one of 2 subs. There wasn't even a sub keeper. It was, you know, 12 and 14. You were the subs. A lot of it is a blur. I've got to be honest. You know, Robbie Elliott was left back on that day. He got injured before half time, and it was just a case of OZzie saying, "Johnny, you're going on at left back." Well, I was right-footed to start with. I'd never played left back in a black and white shirt. But it was just, you know, again, no pressure, just go on and express yourself, enjoy the experience. And, you know, unfortunately, we lost the game on the day. But Sunderland got relegated the same day at Man City.
No way.
You know, every cloud.
And when you were fighting, obviously coming through in the first team at the time, what was it like? Who was the players that you were fighting against in that position?
I suppose you're talking about Steve Watson, you know, being the same age. You know, Steve had already established himself as a full back or wing back at the time. and I suppose Steve was, you know, probably had matured earlier than I had. He was taller,
Right.
stronger, a better athlete, let's say.
Yeah.
But you know, when he took his chance, there was no looking back for Steve. He, you know, he went on and had a fantastic.
Oh, he did, didn't he? Yeah.
He had, you know, other experienced pros there. We had the likes of Ray Ranson slightly before that. But good pros that, you know, would look after you. So Gavin Peacock, Mickey Quinn, you know, not competing for places, but those were the type of players you were around. Kevin Scott. And obviously you had, you know, young lads, like I said before, Lee Clark coming through, Lee Makel, who, you know, all had good careers, and it was good times.
Yeah. So that's like I say, just before I came on, we're doing the Oaty Coaty. I think I'll get a bit too hype. I'm getting wrong for keeping them up late. But I mean, you mentioned some of the players that were coming through as well, and players around this time that always mention, like they say, the likes of Lee Clark. And I mean, when you were training with them type of players, could you see these lads coming through, and you could see they were going to go on to do something as well?
Yeah, I mean, I've been asked this question before, and I've done some sort of after dinner speaking type thing. Lee Clark was a little bit special. And you could see that when he was sort of 12, 13. He was, you know, he was captain of England schoolboys. And it was the sacrifices and the dedication that he showed that stood him out from everybody else. Not just his natural ability and, you know, everything else that went with it. You could see that he was wholly focused on being the best player he could, and if he was going to be the best player he could, he was going to be a professional and he was going to be successful. You know, I'm fortunate enough to know Lee really well, and I've seen him recently. And I've also said that he's probably one of the best players I ever played against as well. So I had, you know, the pleasure of playing alongside him and growing up through the ranks. But then when I'd left Newcastle, we played Newcastle pre-season for Gateshead. And it was the year that they signed David Ginola, like Les Ferdinand. So we're playing them at the International Stadium, and, you know, it's capacity, their crowd, and you're thinking, this is just an all-star team. Beardsley, Ferdinand, Ginola, Gillespie, Will Fox. You know, it was reel them off, and then you look at the defence, and you've got Pav in goal, Steve Watson, Bez, and Lee Clark for me stood out from all of them. Even on that day, he never lost the ball once. And you know, when you're playing in the same game, I think it's even more noticeable because it was just that sort of that comfort and that extra sort of yard that he seemed to have in possession. Now, I'm not saying marking David Ginola for 45 minutes was easy because I never got anywhere near him. And he'd just drop his shoulder and ping it 50 yards without even trying to run past me. So God help us if that had started. But Lee Clark was something special. And that, you know, people talk about him not having that extra yard of pace, or I don't buy it. I think, you know, if you look back at some of his clips when he was at Newcastle, some of the goals he scored, some of the goals he created, you know, he had a nickname of Jigsaw because he went to pieces in the box. But again, I didn't see that either. He was always a good finisher for me. Technically really good. And, you know, again, being a Wallzone lad like I was coming through the club, it was great to see this group of young players coming from one boys club right into, you know, first team level, and then go on to be successful pros for a long time.
It's amazing. I think, like you just mentioned, Wallzone Club there. I always remember we played a Sunday League game. I don't know, was it the complex or someone close? And we went in the building, and just the names on the wall and the players' shirts and stuff. It's amazing. You think the players that came through from that just one club. It's hats off to what they've done, isn't it? Really.
Yeah, I mean, it's a great institution. You know, it's not just about the football. It's, you know, they teach the kids the rights, sort of morals. You know, and yes, there's 80-odd lads who have came through Wallzone and become professional footballers, but it's all the other good citizens that have come through the club and maybe gone on and been doctors or, you know, whatever it may be in the working life. but they've had a good ground and a good start, because that's what boys clubs are about. Not just about the end product of professionals. It's giving kids an opportunity, a place to go and play. And if they're good enough, then the pathway is there for them. But Wallzone's a special place for sure.
Yeah, amazing. And what was it like just representing Newcastle overall? And what would you say was your best highlight of your time at Newcastle?
I think making your debut was
Yeah.
I mean, I'd literally just turned 17. I was 17 in April of 14th. My debut was May the 11th, so I was really young, and just to be able now, sitting talking to you, to say I played for my hometown club, something that nobody's going to ever be able to take away from me. All my family were there, friends were there. Like I said, Sunderland got relegated that day. There was a pitch invasion at the end, and just as you're coming off, people congratulating you, and it's it's 32 years ago, 31 years ago. Still remember it really fondly. And again, it's something that I can talk to the kids about, hopefully my grandkids. Amazing.
Yeah, great times. Just before we go back to Stephen with some more questions after Newcastle, just one question that came in there from Luke. What's your favourite bit of memorabilia that you've gotten from your career, personal to you, or from kind of someone else in a game?
I've got my debut shirt. We had 2 shirts, and I've got the shirt I wore, and that's framed in the house. And I've also got the Hull City shirt that I swapped my second shirt with. So I've got both shirts from that game, which again are very special. I wasn't really one for memorabilia through the time I played, but recently I went on a trip with Wallzone Boys Club with Alan Shearer to Hong Kong, and Alan signed a shirt for me when we were out there, just thanking for the company and the support when he was out there. It was a great week, a lot of fundraising going on. It was pretty special.
Oh, it's amazing. I think you watch football now, and you literally players coming off at half time, they're chucking shirts to each other, and you see the managers' faces, the angry faces out there, they just don't like it at all. They don't back to yourself first.
You couldn't be giving strips away those days.
Get rung off the kit, man.
Just touching on a bit of when Newcastle decided to release you, John, what was going through your head, and how did you cope with that whole process of your hometown club releasing you?
I think you knew it was coming. If I'm being honest, you get the signs. When Kevin came in as manager, the whole landscape of the club changed. He was able to bring in players for good money, whereas beforehand, like I said, OZzie was having to rely on youngsters, and you could see there was an opportunity there. I think very quickly you could see the dynamic of certainly the first team was changing. It was, obviously Killer came in, then it was Rob Lee, and all of a sudden it was, hundreds of thousands for players. And I think that was when a lot of young players realised that maybe I'm not going to make it here, and maybe I'm going to have to look elsewhere. In all honesty, probably wasn't going to be good enough to sort of compete at that sort of level. But I think, whilst it's still disappointing to hear, you haven't got a future there, the club, again, were fantastic. I had a lot of clubs lined up for me to go to on trial, or offers were on the table, and the club had facilitated a lot of that as well. In particular, Derek Fazakli, who was a reserve team coach at the time. So there was, it was at the end of that sort of story, but there was opportunities beyond that, which I was grateful, because the club could have just said thanks and off you go.
Obviously you played for some other clubs like Gated, Scunthorpe, but I think I was brief stint at Durham City, I believe. What out of those other clubs you represented, what's kind of like a standout memory from those days after leaving Newcastle?
Well, obviously I left Newcastle and went to Scunthorpe originally.
Yeah.
Stayed in the Football League, managed to play a few Football League games. I think highlight from that was playing in the third round of the FA Cup against Wimbledon. Down at, they were playing at Selhurst Park at the time because they didn't have their home ground. And, you know, Wimbledon at the time had Vinnie Jones, John Fashanu, Dean Holdsworth. So they were, you know, a good first division team at the time. And I think that was a, you know, a highlight, just saying I've managed to play in the third round of the FA Cup, in front of the TV cameras. Again, lost the game. Dean Holdsworth scored a hat-trick. But it was, you know, whereas after that, I'd managed to play in the FA Cup, but it was in the earlier rounds.
Yeah.
Getting to the third round and actually playing at that sort of point in the tournament was a good experience.
Yeah.
And beyond that, you know, I spent 4 years, fantastic years at Gateshead. Probably some of the best football I played in my career.
Right.
You know, at the time they won the Vauxhall Conference, which was the highest point of non-league football. We were always competitive. You know, geographically we had probably problems because, you know, our derby game was Halifax, for example. But all of our away games were either London or Dover, Yeovil. You know, mammoth trips where you are travelling, you know, maybe the night before, overnight stays. Remember playing Yeovil on a Tuesday night.
Right.
So we travelled down on a coach to Yeovil, played the game, and then got straight back on the coach and came home. Well, he didn't get home till like 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning. But there were great times. We had a really, really good group of players. I've always said that we were probably maybe 2 or 3 players short of going into the Football League with that squad.
Right.
And lads who, you know, still friendly with now, who, you know, we're trying to arrange a get together post COVID, because it was a special group of lads who, like I say, we've kept in touch. And Gateshead probably at the time was as close as you were going to get to playing for your local team again.
Just touching on a bit, obviously, I know you dropped down the divisions to play the likes of Falgate and obviously a bit lower Durham City and stuff. What was it like playing in those leagues? I can imagine there was some pretty questionable tackles going flying in at times, was there?
Real man's football and that, wasn't it?
You wouldn't get away with much of it now, to be fair. Played for Durham. I was actually player manager for a little while at Durham City.
Right.
Played a few times at Whitley Bay in the Northern League and the Unibond. I really enjoyed it. I think it was again some good, honest players, lads who had maybe dropped out of the leagues, or, you know, young lads who were trying to make a name for themselves in non-league football. And I think if anybody goes and watches non-league football now, it's really honest and, you know, genuine. Yes, it's blood and thunder, and you might see things that you might not see on Match of the Day on a Saturday night, but it's honest lads just, you know, wanting to play. Yes, they might get a little bit of pocket money, but generally it's not about the money. It's they want to play. They want to play at the highest level they can, and enjoy it, which is most important.
Obviously, coming on later into your career and towards the end of your career, basically, you had to make a difficult decision to retire. What was the thought process behind your retirement decision?
It's quite easy, really. My eldest son was sort of 6, 7 at the time, showing promise of a young footballer. And what wasn't ideal was he was coming down to games with me and being around that environment where it wasn't the best place for him at that time. And I wanted to be able to watch him play rather than him being dragged around to watch me. And Jack, you know, he's just turned 18. He's had a good youth football career. He's been in Sunderland's academy for a few years. He's still in at South Shields Academy now. And, you know, he played for Wallzone Boys Club for a lot of years as well, like I did. And watching your son play at that sort of level, you know, it's rewarding in itself. So
yeah,
it was an easy decision. You know, you could feel it was a good time. You know, a lot of players play on till the sort of late 30s and drag it out a little bit. I would say, but I wanted to finish when I wanted to finish, and
yeah,
that was the perfect time for me.
yeah.
Yeah,
Really, I'd
definitely.
pass you about the rainy there.
Just getting someone to kind of the club now as well. I mean, I kind of met you at the Burnley game and going to former players' events. How special is it to get back together with former players at them type of events?
It's really positive what the club's doing.
Yeah.
You know, and this goes back to the old regime, which, you know, there wasn't a lot of positive things you could say about them, in all honesty, but they did embrace, you know, getting former players recognised,
Yeah,
getting them together at functions, whether it's games or outside of the club. And, you know, you're seeing lads who you maybe haven't seen for 30 years, and all of a sudden there's that click again. You're talking about, you know, old stories and
Yeah.
and you know, guys who you've never met before, and all of a sudden you're hearing about their experiences maybe 20 years before you had that experience. So it's really positive, and hopefully the new owners, you know, embrace it as well. I'm sure they will, and continue getting those players recognised, because it's, you know, it's not just about, you know, the Shearers, you know, the big
Yeah.
players. It's also about those who have represented the club, and maybe
Mhm.
like yourself, only played a couple of games or spent 3 or 4 years at the club, but weren't fortunate enough to play a first team game. You know, they've still got are still part of the history of the club.
Yeah,
And it's good that that's been recognised, because I do think a lot of the clubs around the country have done this for years, and it's good now that Newcastle are following through with that.
No, it's really good. I always tell Stephen, the lads who help with the Toon Talk, and even just the day I was there, just at half time being sat around, and I mean, there's lads there that won the first cup, and you just sit and listen to everyone just saying, "Can you remember this player? Can you remember in this game? Can you remember the change rooms when this lad did this?" And it was, I just sat in silence at half time and just took all these stories in. I was just with a big smile on my face. It was amazing. And Parker asking, "Dad, who's this? Dad, who's that?" But it's not just that as well. You see players when you go and walk around the stadium before the match, and they'll see the former players board that's now outside St James's Park, and you see a lot of former players pointing the pictures taken and stuff like that. And it just means so much to them. And
Yeah,
as you mentioned there, it's not all about the likes of Shearer and the players that's played a lot more games for the club, like yourself, myself, and Steve. And now in the Facebook group, we've had nearly 50 former players that's done these interviews. And there's a couple where I've messaged them and they've actually messaged back saying, "But why do you want to speak to me? I didn't do anything." I was like, "Well, you have. You've possibly given up like 6, 7 years of your life going from possibly under 11s through to under 18s reserve, and that's a massive sacrifice, and you don't understand some of the players and when you've spoke to them and kind of had a chat with them and they've shared the memories, they've just said like, actually, thank you so much for messengers. You've just reminded us how much that I actually missed what I've done for Newcastle United." It's amazing, really, isn't it?
yeah. And I think we've got a group sort of WhatsApp for the former players, and you know, it's not just about getting together, having a couple of drinks and reminiscing. It's good for people's mental health as well.
Yeah.
You know, especially through COVID, what we've experienced, it was a sort of forum to get in touch with people, have a chat, and you
Yeah.
know, touch base. Where some people, you know, they may not have family around them, or feeling a little bit sort of isolated. So there's that side of things as well. That is all positive from it.
No, it's really good. I mean, as a fan going to watch the games a lot more now as well, John, and I mean, over the last 15 years, and you've seen under Mike Ashley, just what was it like when obviously you heard the takeover news that was coming? I mean, I know we've heard it so many times in the past. Do you think that the takeover was going ahead and there was be brighter times ahead now?
Oh, I mean, well, we've seen over the last few months, the excitement's back, isn't it? The buzz.
Yeah.
I was fortunate enough to be at the Arsenal game. I mean,
Yeah.
some fans have never seen that, because they're not old
It's
enough to have
amazing.
seen, you know, the entertainers, for example. But as a former player and as a fan now, you feel it. So as a player on that pitch, you know, the likes of Trippier coming in, Dan Burn, Bruno, they must be sort of feeling that fully. and that's only got to benefit the side, the squad moving forward. You know, it's across the city, isn't it? You know, it's just that good fuel factor again.
No, it's great. And obviously with the new owners now, over I would say the next 3 or 4 years, how far do you think we can actually go with these owners and the players that's coming in?
Well, I think initially what they've done is they've obviously stabilised. They've kept the club up, which, you know, yes, they had to invest in the squad, but I think they've invested in the right way. They've spent really wisely. They've brought in, you know, good, honest pros who haven't cost a fortune, but they're experienced Premier League players, which was a good start. You know, obviously Bruno is slightly different, but I think he is going to excite the fans for a long time. And I think this summer they're showing signs of almost a gradual sort of approach, rather than going and maybe make that marquee signing for 100 million, let's say. I don't think that's what Newcastle really need yet.
Yeah.
I think if they can build for the next 2-3 seasons, then there's no reason during that time why they can't be competitive in the top 6. You know, why can't they challenge with the likes of Arsenal, Spurs, Man United? You know, they're not what Man United was like 10, 15 years ago. So then the investment, it's not just the investment in the squad. You know, you feel like it's going to be similar to what the owners at Man City have done. The investment in the infrastructure, the academy, probably the wider community as well. You know, we'll see a new training ground, I'm sure, in time. You know, they're investing in the existing one at the moment. Probably going to be investment in the ground, which was, you know, really needed. But it's just all positive, isn't it? You know, I think we'll probably sign another 3 or 4 players in the summer.
Yeah, it's coming, isn't it?
Hopefully get a couple of strikers in, because, you know, as good as Callum Wilson is, I think, you know, he's only 1 game away from an injury at times, because he's always playing on the edge. So I do think we need a couple of, you know, whether it's a young striker or a more experienced striker to come in and share the load for goals. I think maybe 1 more midfielder to probably play alongside Bruno and Joe Linton in there. But I think it's all looking really positive. You know, I think in, you know, 2-3 years time, we'll have won some silverware. And, you know, what that'll mean to the fans in the city will be superb.
As you say, there's a lot of pictures going around during the week of the stadium getting a kind of paint and flags going up and big TVs going on the wall. So everyone, it's funny, like before the game, you'll have the early kick-off and everyone's like on the TV squinting and looking, trying to see what the score is. And hopefully they'll just change the call. If they change the call, and that they've won me over all day, like, so I'm sick of drinking that at the matches before.
I think that's what the owners have done. They've been very clever in listening.
Listening to
the fans. You know, they've obviously took stock when they've bought the club. They've done the due diligence, and they've realised it's the little things that, you know, cleaning the windows, paintwork, TVs, all those things are, you know, as part of the match day experience. And I know that the money that goes over the turnstile is it's small change to them, but, you know, if you want that backing and you want the 53,000, 54,000 there every week, buying into what you're talking about, then those little things matter.
Yeah, it's huge. And judges for you, we go as well. I mean, we mentioned, and you've just came from the golf course there, well into your golf and other things as well. Any sign of coaching? I know I think I've seen a few pictures of you. I don't know if is it the county FA that you do a bit of coaching for, or?
Yeah, coaching has just come to an end. So I have done a lot of coaching. I lived in America for 4 years, and I coached when I was playing there. So when I came home, I've coached at Wallzone Boys Club for a few years. I've coached with the North Tyneside Schools FA.
Brilliant.
Recently, I've been coaching with New Hartley, their under-18 squad. And that's a lot of that tied in with Jack, your eldest, his football. Whilst that I've never been one for these, you know, career coaches who, you know, want to do all the badges, and always felt like I had something to offer, and whether it was more of a sort of man management side and talking to players of like, you know, experience and you know, maybe think about this rather than just a coaching side and putting drills on, which is, you know, great if that's what you want to do. It was never something I really wanted to go down that road. A lot of friends have, and they've been very successful. But I always found, like, you know, tactically I could express myself to younger people and guide them that way. And just, you know, speaking to young boys, how I'd like to be spoken to as well, you know, taking little bits from different managers and coaches over the years. So going back to how OZzie would speak to you and build you up and tell you how good you were. Some managers weren't like that. Some managers were more sort of forceful and critical to try and get the best out of you. You know, it's man management, isn't it? It's what works and you know, what makes the player tick. If you can get out of them, you know, you've got to use all sort of measures, haven't you? But no more coaching. That's me done.
All done.
My wife will be listening to this, and I better not say anything else. But I do play a lot of golf, and she's very accommodating in that sense.
Oh, you've picked a nice day for us. Been lovely this weekend. You're picking some cracking days to be out on the course. But no, John, thank you so much for coming on tonight. As I said, it's absolutely a pleasure just getting the lads on and just talking about your memories. And it must be amazing to yourself just going back over their memories every now and again as well.
It is, you know, a lot of these things you don't talk about unless you're asked. I tend to be very reserved, so, you know, I don't go out and saying I've done this, I've done that. If people want to talk about it, I'm more than willing, like today. But, you know, I liked my own experiences to be my own. But if you know, people want to, you know about them and understand them, again, you know, quite happy to share that. And it's been a pleasure.
Excellent. And I hope my wife's not watching, but we've got another 3 live shows coming up this week. Wednesday night, we've got Daniel on, who you probably met, John, the autograph hunter. He's got all of he can't wait to come on and show his scrapbook and all the players that he's got these autographs from as well. Thursday night as well, we've got our gossip show coming back. I think the rumours are a lot more picking up this week. Another couple of, like John said, Stephen said during the week, 2 or 3 more players I think is going to be coming in. And then Sunday, obviously, we've got the Free Legends show as well. Myself, a Borough fan and a Sunderland fan coming on, just to give a different opinion on the whole thing rather than just being all Newcastle United. So that should be really interesting, and see how the comments go with the mixture of the fans watching on that one. That should be a little bit X-rated, that one, but we'll see how that goes. But John, thank you very much for coming on, Stephen, as well, for joining us tonight, asking the questions as well. But I hope everyone watching enjoyed the show. If you haven't already, hit that subscribe, and we'll see you again on Wednesday night. And I hope you enjoy the rest of your night as well.